Hi everyone, it's great to be with you today. Thank you to Milani for asking me to share with you. I'd really just like to share about a time in my life where the Lord called me to do something, how he guided me and how he helped me through that time. And although this is very specifically about a call to mission, I feel that some of the principles that I learnt could apply to any of you who feel that the Lord is calling you to do something for him. So I had always felt called to mission. I'd been very fortunate to do 2 short-term mission trips to Cape Town, but knew that I wanted to serve in Africa on a longer term basis, and that if I was going to do that I'd have to go with an organisation. So the Lord led me very clearly to Africa Inland Mission, and so I met with one of their representatives just to hear more about them, the work that they do, and if there would possibly be a way I could serve through them. So it was very glamorous. We met at a motorway service station, and whilst it was very exciting hearing about all the work that AIM do, the reality of what that would mean really hit home, and I can remember feeling very emotional as I drove home that day. So I knew that it would mean giving up my job, giving up my home, obviously separation from friends and family. So I felt quite emotional by the time I got home. And when I did get home, I turned on my phone and had 4 text messages from different friends, none of whom know each other, not related in any way, but they had all sent me the same scripture. And that scripture is from Genesis 12, when God calls Abraham. And he says, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. So that was wonderful confirmation, and it made me feel a bit calmer. So not long after that, I was able to go on holiday to the States to visit friends in Florida who had spent a lot of time serving in Africa. And whilst I was staying with them, I really felt the Lord saying to me that Kenya was where I should go. And I can remember the day before I was due to fly home, again feeling very emotional, very scared, really wondering if I should do this, because although I felt that the Lord had confirmed the calling, that still didn't take away those emotions. And that afternoon, the friends I was staying with just said, look, we think we should just watch this recording from a sermon that we heard the other week. And it was a guest speaker at their church, and he was talking on calling for mission. And he, at the end of his sermon, he looked down the camera and he said, I know that some of you are feeling scared and you're frightened to go, but God will be with you. And then he quoted from Genesis 12. So that again was very reassuring. So I got back to the UK and signed all the papers to go to Kenya. And the role that I was supposed to be doing was to work with children's homes and with the staff in the children's homes, really teaching teenage girls, teenage boys about health, self-esteem and just general hygiene, public health issues. The day after I signed the papers to go was the day of the terrorist attack on the Westgate shopping centre in Nairobi. So whilst it was a concern, it didn't really bother me that much. I still felt definitely called to go, but there were people who tried to dissuade me. But I knew that the Lord wanted me to go. And I'm not saying that the next few months were easy. There were times, obviously, when I doubted. I remember on my last day going into work thinking, this is it, I've given up my job, what am I doing, is this the right thing? And as I turned on my car radio, some of you may know there's a song by an 80s band called Toto, and the title of the song is Africa. So literally as I turned on the radio, that song came on. So I laughed and just knew then that, again, that was the Lord guiding me. So with great excitement, eventually the day arrived and I flew into Nairobi and spent a week in general training, and after that moved into the accommodation that I was meant to be staying in. Unfortunately, this accommodation turned out to be next door to a nightclub, and it was so loud that the whole building of the accommodation would literally shake when the music started. So I had about 4 nights with hardly any sleep, but thankfully was moved to a much quieter location. And then the day came for me to head off on my first trip up into rural Kenya. So the driver who was meant to take me unfortunately couldn't, so another driver turned up. And at this time, because of the security situation in Kenya, there were lots of police roadblocks, and travelling in Kenya wasn't easy. And sadly, some of the police in Kenya aren't that honest, and they would quite often use it as a way to make money. So we'd been driving for about 2 hours when a police car pulled us over, and the policeman took great delight in telling me that my driver was speeding, that he would have to go to court, and that my journey would have to end unless I was prepared to pay them some money so that we could continue. So I wasn't in a position to do that, so we wasted 3 hours at a police station going to court, and yeah, wasted a lot of time. So I'd only been in the country a few weeks. I was scared, apprehensive, frightened, but I just had to cry out to God to protect me and for him to resolve the situation. So we then headed off, and the nearer we got to the location, the more the weather got worse. This was in a high mountainous area, and the roads weren't great, so it was quite frightening. But eventually I arrived at the children's home and had a great week with them. I was then driven to another children's home in a completely different area, and that week was very, very difficult, and I felt very alone. The people at the children's home didn't particularly want me there, and it was really hard going. But on the last day, the Lord really broke through, and I felt that I established a good relationship, and that my time there had been worthwhile, and that God had really, blessed some of the children during the time I was there. So it was time to travel back to Nairobi. As you can imagine, I was very apprehensive. And the social worker from the children's home volunteered to come with me, which I was very grateful for. So the driver turned up, we set off, and yes, you've guessed it, we were pulled over by the police. This time I was really scared. It was in the middle of nowhere. There were 2 policemen with guns, very agitated, very angry. The whole situation was very volatile. They kept asking for money, which I didn't have. I was very, very scared. I was on the phone to my boss in Nairobi and just crying out to God to get me back to Nairobi safely, which eventually happened. So the situation calmed down and headed back to Nairobi. Obviously, by the time I got back there, I was very tired, feeling very drained, and really wondering what on earth I was going to do, because I just couldn't see how the situation was sustainable for me to be travelling in Kenya. So thankfully, the organisation I was with were very understanding and knew of a big mission hospital just outside Nairobi where they had some staff working. But the only way I could work there was if I actually was registered to practice as a nurse in Kenya. So we applied for that, and the office were told that it would take 3 months for my registration to come through, which wasn't ideal. However, literally 3 days later, my registration arrived. So I was able to practice in Kenya and work as a nurse. So before I moved to the hospital, I was able to go and visit a church in Thika that my sending church had a relationship with, and had a lovely time with them. And then a driver came to pick me up to drive me back to Nairobi. And as we were driving back, we got caught in a riot on one of the main highways. So again, I was very scared, just thinking, Lord, do you really want me here? Can I keep experiencing this if it's just not safe for me to be in Kenya? But thankfully, my driver was very experienced, very good. He got us out of the situation, and with a big detour, we eventually arrived safely back in Nairobi. So after that, I moved up to the hospital and settled in and absolutely thrived. I worked in an HIV clinic and spent a lot of time, obviously, with patients, working with the staff, getting to know them. They taught me a lot. I was able to work alongside them. Hopefully, I taught them something as well, and just loved being able to pray with patients, because that was expected. That was part of my role, was to pray with patients and just see the Lord touch people in such a powerful way, which was just wonderful. And I knew then that despite all the difficulties, that I'd almost had to go through that for the Lord to get me where I was meant to be. And I absolutely loved it. So Christmas was approaching, and in the week leading up to Christmas, I had a lot of contact with a lady who was very unwell. She was a young mother, married with 2 young boys. So I used to go and visit her on the ward every day, pray with her, just talk through life with her, but not really knowing what the outcome would be for her. And I can remember having to say goodbye to her because I was going away for the Christmas break. And that was quite hard, saying goodbye to her, because I just didn't know how things would pan out for her. So after the Christmas break, I went back to work, and nobody seemed to know what had happened to this lady. They couldn't confirm if she'd gone home or if the outcome had been really bad. So I felt sad, but I didn't have a way of tracing her. So I just had to release her to the Lord and hope that his hand was still on her. On my last day at the hospital, before I was due to return back to the UK, I was sitting outside the clinic eating my lunch and just reflecting on my time there, and suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned round, and it was this lovely lady who I'd been able to spend time with before Christmas. And she looked at me and put her arms in the air, and she just said, "Ruth, I am healed, I am healed." And she said, "Mungu, Mungu," which is Kiswahili for God. And I knew then that even if I just was sent to Kenya just to spend some time praying with this lady, then that was all that mattered. And it was just great, because I could see how God had worked, how he had healed her, and that, yeah, he can do so much more than we can ask or imagine, and he just works in such a beautiful way. So I think I just want to encourage you that if you feel that God is calling you to do something, he will make it clear. So know your calling. Just know what it is that he has called you to do. Ask him for signs, and ask him to speak to you and to confirm your calling. Even though you know what you're called to do, sometimes the going will get tough, but God will reassure you. And I think if he's already shown you so clearly that you're to do something for him, the fact that you know your calling will be what keeps you grounded and helps you to stand firm when the going gets tough. And just remember that he is so powerful and he's with you. And I'd just like to leave you with a verse from 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 24. The one who calls you is faithful, and he will do it. So don't be afraid, just go where God's called you, whether that's just down the road or to the other side of the world.